There's an article out by David Bonilla on 49er Web Zone, and it's entitled Brock Purdy Sends Clear Message to Brandon Aiyuk Amid Contract Talks with the 49ers. And so the story plays on 49er Web Zone like, Purdy backed his guy. And, when you hear that, you're thinking the clear message is, hey, that's my best receiver. That's my go-to guy. I want him here. By hook or by crook, I love him, I need him, and I want him. You know what I mean? Something along those lines I thought I was going to read. Then I go down to the quote, and here's the quote. And it's from Cam Inman. Cam Inman talked to Brock Purdy there was a little kid's camp, and he went up to him and asked him about Aiyuk. And this is what Purdy said. And tell me what your takeaway is on this. He says, we've talked. I just told him, we've being Purdy and Aiyuk. We've talked. I just told him I'll always have his back and support him in whatever he does. I want the best for him. It's a business thing. So for me to say anything about that, that's out of my pay grade. He and I talk through things and I hear him out. At the end of the day, what he's done for me, giving me an opportunity to come in and throw him the ball, I'll always be thankful for that.
Hey. That's about as clear as mud.
Yeah, that's not clear.
That's but about as clear as mud. What are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that he's not coming back? That sounded ominous.
It does.
I really cherish my time together with Brandon, and I always be grateful, and I always remember, and I can't what?
If I came up to you in the 49er press room and said, Grant, you know what? I'll always remember what you did for me, helping me get on YouTube. You would be like, oh, Larry's moving to Florida.
Are you going somewhere?
Yeah.
Did you get in trouble? Did you get sick? Are you leaving? What's up?
Yeah. Are you going to prison? Is this it? Yeah.
What happened, man? Are you going to give me your stereo next? Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, that sounds to me
bad.
Like a guy like Brock Purdy knows there's a very good chance that he's never going to play with Brandon Aiyuk again. And he wanted to let him know what he meant to his career. That didn't sound like he's going to be here. I absolutely stood behind him.
It sounded like he said, look, I don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Aiyuk, but I'm prepared for him to leave. Now, he did say, I talked to Brandon, and we can you say that part of it? I talked to Brandon and we discussed things.
He said, we've talked. I just told him I'll always have his back and support him in whatever he does. I want the best for him. It's a business thing. So for me to say anything about that, that's out of my pay grade. He and I talk through things, and I hear him out. At the end of the day, what he's done for me, giving me an opportunity to come in and throw him the ball, I'll always be thankful for that.
That's terrible. We talked, and I can't really talk about it, but yeah, it sounds awful. It sounds like, not awful. It sounds like it's a done deal. Ooh, boy. So maybe when he unfollowed the Niners, it's because he been talking to another team and it's getting somewhat official, and who knows. But yeah, it doesn't sound good.
That does not sound like Brandon Aiyuk's coming back. To me. But it wasn't like that. If it was clear, it would have been like, hey, I need you. I can't do this without you. And I expressed that to Lynch. That's a clear message, right? That would be like the Brock Purdy clear message. I gotta have you, man. You're my guy across the middle. You're the guy that I hook up with the most. And I told John and Kyle that. That's a clear message. This is like, hey, man, I appreciate you no matter what happens from here on out. Like you could be gone tomorrow. At least to me, I don't know. To me,
I got a theory.
That's what is it?
Robert Prado just pointed it out. He says, I got quiet once the Niners told him they'll trade on one of his desired locations. What if they're working and they've determined that they're not going to be able to give Aiyuk what he wants, and they will, out of courtesy to him, explore deals to see if another team would give him what they want. And maybe they have a couple of offers that they kind of like, but they don't want the rest of the league to know that. And that's maybe why the agent was so quick to shut this down, because maybe the Niners have some deals that don't include first round picks, but multiple twos, and they need to see who's there at 31 first, or they don't want teams to know. How about that? They don't want teams to know right now that they're in the market for a wide receiver in round one. That's their secret, because they haven't traded Aiyuk yet. So they can sort of work covertly, be a dark horse there. I don't know.
Well, there's also, they may feel like one of these, like Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke, I mean, let's look at Jacksonville. They were riding high. The Niners went in there, beat them. Then they sunk like a stone. And what did they do to react to it? They fired their entire defensive staff. Well, guess what? Guess who's getting it next? It's not going to be Doug Peterson wearing the Super Bowl ring. They're not going to blame Trevor Lawrence, Mr. Quarterback, face of the franchise. They're going to blame Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke's gone next. So I think, if let's say Jacksonville needs a receiver and they're looking at Brian Thomas from LSU, he might even be better than Aiyuk over time. It's not going to be better than Aiyuk next year, though. And if you're Trent Baalke, I mean, let's be honest, and I know Trent Baalke well enough to know he's a survivor and he will do what he needs to do to keep those NFL paychecks coming in. And if the Jaguars miss the playoffs this year, Trent Baalke is getting fired. I'm pretty confident of that. So I think Jacksonville's the team at 17 that's going to say, you know what? We want Aiyuk. We want Aiyuk. And yeah, we'll give you Aiyuk. We'll give you Walker Little, and we'll give you a 3rd-round pick. And maybe the Niners are just waiting until they see if Fatanu or some receiver or the tight end from Georgia or, somebody that they really, really like is there at 17, and maybe they'll do it. But I think Trent Baalke wants to win next year because if he doesn't win, he thinks he'll be fired. I think he's all about himself.
And this is why I feel that Aiyuk is going to get traded, because I think Jacksonville's interested. I think Pittsburgh's interested. I think the Chargers should be interested. How could Washington not be interested? Again, they have Adam Peters. They're going to be drafting a quarterback. Why would you not want to give him the best wide receivers possible? So to give him the best chance to succeed. It seems like there's at least 3 or 4 teams that would be interested. And if that's the case, then he's probably gone.
Yeah. Yeah. This is another one I got to get your thoughts on. This is just amazingly stupid. Now, granted, this is an anonymous NFL executive speaking.
Real quick, before we move on, just before I had a thought, and then we'll move on.
Go ahead.
If the Niners granted, like Eric Armstead politely said, "Could you please release me?" And the Niners did, because they want to be seen as the player-friendly team. So if Brandon Aiyuk
that's
says,
important.
Guys,
that's important to the other players.
Look, guys, I don't want to negotiate with you. I don't want to be on this team anymore. I don't want to be the 4th option in a run-first team. I'd rather leave. Would you please look for a trade for me? I mean, the Niners have kind of established that they're the team that will. They're not going to hold a player against his will. Look what they did with Armstead.
People ask me too. It's like, how do you feel about an Aiyuk trade? Well, I don't love it because the Niners are in their win now mode. But at the same time, you're paying your quarterback 50 times what you're paying him. Some big time guys are going to have to go. If you're asking me who's easier to replace, Trent Williams or George Kittle or a receiver, every year in the draft, you could sign Tyler Boyd tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Tyler Boyd could have comparable numbers if you throw him the ball to Aiyuk. I mean, Ayuk's better. We all know that, but Tyler Boyd's pretty damn good. So, and there's good receivers in this draft and in mid rounds even. So, I think Aiyuk could be replacing the wide receiver is easier than replacing some of these other positions.
I mean, when the question came down, like, should you pay Nick Bosa? There was never like an issue of, well, will you use him enough to justify the contract? Like, yeah, you're going to use him enough. I mean, if he continues to get 18 sacks a season, then yeah, it's worth it. But with Aiyuk, it's different. Are you going to give him the ball enough to justify paying him what he's worth? No, no. The answer is no. And can you afford him and Aiyuk and Debo and Purdy? Absolutely not. So what are you going to do?
Here's the question. The Niners threw 3 passes to Aiyuk in all 3 playoff games. Why? Why did they throw him 3 passes? Why did he have 3 catches in those games?
Because he's not.
Is that going to dramatically change in the future?
No. It should have happened already. He was, the number 1 target in the regular season, but when it came to playoff games, Kyle Shanahan didn't trust him anymore. I mean, if you look in targets, he might have been 4th or 5th. Let me look that up real quick. I know it's.
And people also, we get, you and I get a lot of the, hey, they said this, they said that. They said in late July they loved Trey Lance and traded him for a 4th-round pick like a week later. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Nobody's ever going to no smart executive's ever going to verbally devalue an asset that they're trying to move. So they're always going to say, he's our guy. We love him. Like, do you get this? Because I get this all the time. Lynch says he loves him. Lynch says that, they really, it's like, really? Are we going there? That, you don't, contract talks 101 and how you deal with players. You're going to say you love the player right up until even beyond. They said they loved Trey Lance after they traded him. They're going to say they love Aiyuk after they trade him. If they trade him.
Aiyuk had 9 catches in the postseason. Juwan Jennings had 10. Debo had 13. McCaffrey had 19. And it's interesting. So Brandon really didn't do much in the playoffs. He had that big catch. You take away that huge catch he had against Detroit that bounced off the defender's face. I mean, it was like the luckiest play of all time.
Right.
He had 8 catches for less than 100 yards in the playoffs. Aiyuk.
In 3 playoff games, you mean?
In 3 playoff games. And what's crazy is, who else was right down there in production? Kittle. 8 catches, 112. No one talks about Kittle because he's older and he's a good blocker, but in the playoffs, he does nothing as a receiver. Nothing.
I think you're going to see the Niners go after a top-tier tight end blocker so that they can use Kittle more as a receiver.
They need
if they
to
move off of Aiyuk.
They need to. I always want to give Kittle the benefit of the doubt with that one, because I feel like if he were on a different team, like if you took Travis Kelce off the Chiefs and put Kittle on the team, he would have 80 catches, 90 catches in a season.
None of this dialogue is providing any answers, but we are talking it through, and the more you talk it through, the more it seems like they're just. I would say, if you said to me, give me some odds, I would say 65-35 he gets traded. I think
so. I mean, when you read Purdy's quote, that sounded terrible.
Did not.
It just sounded
like
really bad. I've talked to Aiyuk and yada 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 yada. He could have said, "I've talked to Aiyuk and I don't want to speak on him, but like just be patient and these things work themselves out." He could have said that, but he didn't.
Right. I'll always support you.
It's a business,
and I'll never. If I come up to you and go, Grant, I'll never forget what you did for me. That does not reek of, hey, we'll see you next week. That's
it doesn't. It's are we done?
I'm moving to Georgia.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm never going to see you again. I'll never forget what you did for me. That's kind of what that sounded like.
Yeah. So again, my best guess is the Niners have some offers. It's probably closer to happening than people realize. Doesn't mean that it's a done deal though. And it may be contingent on certain things. Things happen. There's a week and a half left. But I think probably get mentally prepared for him not to be on this team in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. No, seriously. And I think it's gonna bother a lot of people because you quickly see the same things I see. They should trade Debo instead. Okay. That's pie in the sky. Debo he's not worth the same. It's like they should have traded Armstead instead of Buckner. Well, of course, but there was no market for Armstead. There's a market for Buckner. There's a market for Aiyuk. There is no market, for Debo.
And what also is going to hurt is when he gets traded to another team and they pay him all that money, then they're going to be committed to giving him the ball. So his numbers will be crazy. I would imagine if he stays healthy, he's going to be catching 100 passes a season instead of 70 and putting up 1,600 yards a season instead of 13. It's okay. Because the Niners are probably going to draft a wide receiver who's really good too. That's the one thing. I think Kyle could pick a good wide receiver at this point. He got the Jalen Hurds and Dante Pettis out of his system in the last few times. Danny Ware notwithstanding, he's been pretty good. Yeah, I even like Ronnie Bell.
I like Ronnie Bell too. But here's the thing. I'm not going to rip the Niners if they trade Brandon Aiyuk, but I am going to rip the Niners if they trade Brandon Aiyuk to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs are one of the teams. I mean, I know it sounds like laughable. I know it sounds laughable, but the Chiefs are one of the teams that badly wants a wide receiver. And if the Niners trade Brandon Aiyuk to the Chiefs, that's the Charles Haley all over again.
I completely agree, because talk about teams that could take full advantage of Brandon Aiyuk. That's one of them. Buffalo would be another one.
Imagine losing a Super Bowl to Brandon Aiyuk, going up top from Mahomes.
That's why you want
Oh.
to trade him somewhere like New England.
Right.
Trade him to the Patriots. You'll never have to worry about him ever again.
Right. You'll be like, you'll hear about him on Sports Center a lot, but he'll never, you won't see him in the playoffs. He'll never burn you.
Nope.
You know,
Patriots.
yeah.